The Last Clue is a production of Smith Media Team, LLC. For more information, email us at info@smithmediateamllc.com.
Previously, on The Last Clue, we discussed the contradictions between the case report and the incident report we received from the Norman Police Department. Names in each report were withheld, including the witnesses and the person who reported the incident. We also talked about the discrepancy with charges not being filed by the Norman PD, while the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner of Oklahoma has ruled Joe Powell's death a homicide. With Norman PD officially listing the case as closed, what happens next?
There are so many questions there, but before we dive in, we want to welcome our new listeners and subscribers. Shout out to Yakima, Washington, Webb City, Missouri, Tuttle, Oklahoma, famous for,
Heisman Trophy winner Jason White.
oh, Boomer.
Sooner.
We also have Cleveland, OH,
I.O.
Indianapolis, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
So, funny story, as a kid, when ESPN was lacking in programming, I would actually get off the bus to watch two things. I would either go home to watch AWA Championship Wrestling that I did not know was taped, probably weeks prior, and I would also watch the Canadian Football League, and besides the Edmonton Eskimos, the Ottawa Rough Riders were my favorite team to watch. I couldn't tell you a person that was on that team now, and this was a few decades ago.
No, you're not that old.
Well, but I couldn't tell you who was on the team, but I really enjoyed watching them.
I did not know that. I I did not know that. Ottawa.
Rough Riders.
Huh. Funny. That's one of the mascots from my school years in Florida.
And also, when I watched the Canadian Football League, there were two teams that were nicknamed the Rough Riders.
That's kind of why I was asking. I thought I remembered a different team being called the Rough Riders, so that was my confusion.
I am going to irritate every Canadian football fan here. I promise you, I am not looking this up, or you would hear the keys rapidly being tapped.
I'm going to just go ahead and tell them you are not looking this up. You are a hardcore football fan, Canadian, USFL, original USFL. So
I believe the other team at that time that was nicknamed the Rough Riders was Saskatchewan.
quite possible. Well, and you know what? While we're sitting here talking about old school football, what am I wearing right now?
The original USFL Michigan Panthers tank top.
Yep. So,
Is that from Royal Retros?
but yeah, sure is. Um, but we also want to welcome our listeners in Pembroke Dock in Pembrokeshire. So, big thank you to all of our new listeners and subscribers. But wherever you're listening right now, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us on The Last Clue.
I always wonder what our international listeners and subscribers think about our accents. I hear it. I will tell you, being a podcaster is really not for me because I hate listening to the sound of my own voice.
I get that.
There's very little editing on our podcast. We do everything in one take.
We do.
But I do hate hearing the sound of my own voice, so it's difficult to go back through and do what very little edits, if any, that we do.
I fully understand. I hate the sound of my own voice as well. So I get that. But yeah, you do have an accent.
So we are getting eerily close to the first day of October.
Mm-hmm. Spooky
I don't,
season.
yeah, well, we have inflatables in the yard to show that. Which one of us is responsible for waking up Billy Joe Armstrong at the end of the month?
Hello, our son. He's the big Green Day fan.
Oh, true. For those of you that don't get that joke, Green Day, wake me up when September ends. That was a terrible joke. I don't know why I told it, but
I totally understood where you were
I,
going, but then again, our son. So there's that. But thank you guys for listening.
on June 25th, 1991, long before Joe Powell was born, the world of country music was introduced to a ballad that rapidly rose up Billboard's U.S. Hot Country Songs. Sawyer Brown's third single off their album Buick was simply titled The Walk. Lead singer Mark Miller vocalized about a boy hesitant to go to school only to be reassured by his father. Later, the same boy, now an adult, agonizes about going out into the real world again to be comforted by his dad. The final verse brings the song full circle as the boy, who became a man, is now walking his father down the same road, taking him to a nursing home. For the Powell family, they were able to experience some of what the song brought to life. But a tragic event, some say even a chance encounter, took Joe Powell away in a matter of moments. Where did Joe Powell go that fateful night, and why? The last clue takes you back to the night of any parent's worst nightmare brought to a devastating reality. This is season 2, episode 4 of The Last Clue. And now, The Walk.
We're going to take you back that night to where Joe was uh, starting on Campus Corner, which is a very popular college oriented commercial district just north of the University of Oklahoma. On the night of March 6th, the weather was pretty standard for that time of year. It was about 55 degrees, wind about 17 miles per hour with gusts up to 26. There was no rain, but it was cloudy and overcast.
I've heard many Oklahomans say that if you don't like the weather in Oklahoma, wait 5 minutes and it'll change. And I'm sure it was the case at this point early in March of this year.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I have heard that as well about the weather, and maybe that kind of explains what happened here while Joe was at Logie's, which is on Asp Avenue. It's a college hangout which features the Sooner watch parties and bar food, karaoke, poker nights, along with your pretty standard college night rituals, bar things happening there with Wing Wednesday, $2 Tuesday for drink specials.
If you're going to be in a major college city, you have to have drink specials pretty much any night of the week other than maybe Friday night and Saturday. And if you don't have Wing Wednesday, then what are you doing as an establishment? You
In a
have to,
college town, for
of
sure.
course, you have to have that.
Yeah, my mocktail Monday. So you should have sort of things going on all nights of the week. But being typical of the weather, that might explain why Joe was at Logie's.
And he decided that his time at Logie's had had come. It was time to go home. But he leaves out of the back courtyard of Logie's at approximately 11:30 p.m. This is shortly after he threw a drink on his friend, which, let me just explain. There was no anger. This was, first of all, a group of friends, and secondly, this is an unofficial rugby tradition, which, if you've listened to our previous podcast, you know that Joe was a very proud rugby player. So, throwing a drink on someone, it typically happens after a win on the pitch in rugby, but it's also seen as a form of team bonding. Now, this may have been after Joe had cooled down a little bit, because Joe had mentioned earlier to his friends that he thought a few men inside of Logie's were trying to, quote, start something, but our sources tell us that he was always a protector, and his friends just kind of dismissed that as just the way he was. So before trekking home, Joe appears to have stopped at the porch, which is on West Boyd. This is just around the corner. For those of you listening, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we've actually walked this route. When you leave the back courtyard of Logie's, it's kind of a small parking lot. It's more of a loading unloading area for the businesses. You walk around Pinkberry. There's a bank on Boyd, couple other things, and then
Yeah, I think there's a little clothing shop there. I
yeah,
say little, but it's kind of like it's a little higher end clothing shop, as you would, expect on a campus
right,
campus corner,
yeah.
literally.
So when you go around the corner, you come to the porch, and our our information says that he possibly stopped at the porch for another drink. Um, most I would have to say most likely the drink that the porch is known for. It's called the Porch Lemonade, and if you're in Norman, try it. You know,
Yeah, I have to imagine that it's kind of like a Long Island iced tea kind of drink because college town, porch lemonade. But
when we go back, maybe we can watch a few people having one, and then you can
yes.
decide from there. But our sources have also told us that there was a charge on Joe's card for approximately $10 at the porch. So that's why we believe at this point that he he made a stop. Because if he was going to get cash, there's an ATM right next door at the
Right.
bank, so there's no reason for him to take out $10 at the porch. So sometime between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, Joe sends a Snapchat to a group of friends as he's near the Fat Shack. This is also on West Boyd.
Oh, the Fat Shack.
Now, our sources have told us that Joe was well known in Snapchat for not just sending pictures of his face. He what was described to us as landmarked everything. He
Okay.
would he would take photos with landmarks behind them so that people, his friends, knew where he was.
So he speaks in landmarks. That's actually not a bad idea. I think I kind of do the same thing, just maybe unknowingly, since I'm not, native here.
but there was no charge on Joe's card at the Fat Shack, especially during that time frame. So we have a Snapchat photo, which I don't have to explain to everybody that Snapchat photos, Snapchat stories disappear after a certain point in time. And according to his friends, Joe had said that he, quote, either needed help or he was heading home, end quote.
Hmm.
So this seems to be the start. Well, not really the start, because if there were people trying to start something inside Logie's on March 6, 2025, this year, then that would have been the prelude to something that happened outside of the Fat Shack that seemed to alert Joe.
Which raises the question, many questions, but the Cleveland County District Attorney says they have video of Joe walking near the Mont at approximately midnight. This video allegedly shows Joe in front of a gas station directly across Boyd Street from the Mont, which is a great dining spot known for its Tex-Mex and great atmosphere and that amazing outside patio area. It's got great club sandwiches, and that also has a signature drink of the Sooner Swirl.
There have been many Sooner swirls consumed inside and outside of the Mont. Now, I say that with all respect to the establishment. They do have a beautiful outside sitting area. So just because I say outside, it doesn't mean that they're letting people walk in and out with Sooner swirls. They have these beautiful tables outside. It's right in their campus. I'm sure during game day you can hear the entire game from the Mont.
Yeah, that outdoor patio area is it's fabulous.
Then Joe disappears. Gone. As of this recording of The Last Clue, there is no trace of Joe since the video near the gas station across from the Mont, except for a doorbell camera that Joe was captured on at approximately 3 a.m., according to the district attorney's office. Now, according to our sources, the DA's office and Norman PD detectives claim that the video shows Joe opening the right rear door of a white 2024 Ford F-250 Super Cab that was allegedly parked in the parking lot of the Rev, which is an apartment complex on McCullough Street, about 1 block from Boyd Street.
Now, we investigated this area and we took the walk. We took Joe's walk. And there are 2 homes in an alleyway near the Rev that have doorbell cameras that we observed, and 1 red brick apartment building that has a doorbell camera in the back. However, all of the doorbell cameras mentioned also have parking spots for vehicles. The red brick apartment has about 6 to 8 parking spots going right up to the back door, which would allow for a very limited view of anything.
Now, I will tell you from my vantage point that when we took that walk, it looked to me like there was every bit of 8 vehicles parked behind that red brick apartment.
It was full.
It there was a very tiny area where you could see anything, and if there was any kind of oversized truck, in my opinion, first of all, somebody'd be upset because they probably wouldn't be able to get out of that small parking lot if there was an oversized truck
into an alleyway.
into an alleyway. That is very, very tight quarters.
Yes.
When we were in that alleyway right behind the red brick apartment, I saw a vehicle coming toward us,
Right.
and I actually grabbed your arm and pulled you out of the way. That's how narrow this alleyway is.
Which is a great segue because our sources say that the doorbell camera in question was triggered by a vehicle passing by. And according to the Cleveland County DA's office and Norman PD investigators, that's where that alleged doorbell camera came from, triggered by a moving vehicle.
So let's understand this. Both the DA's office and Norman PD are saying that that doorbell camera was triggered by a vehicle passing by.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was said vehicle passing by and that vehicle caught an alleged carjacking, according to the Norman Police Department,
Mm-hmm.
and a subsequent attack that ultimately ended Joe Powell's life, are you going to tell me that that person didn't stop?
See anything? Say anything? I understand it's 3 a.m. I understand it's a college town. And I understand there's a lot of decisions influenced by alcohol. But at no point, if you're seeing this alleged carjacking and assault, you're not mentioning it to anyone at any time, and your vehicle is the one that's triggered this doorbell camera. Where's this vehicle?
So let's break down just really quickly, because our listeners are already on top of this. Let's break down the argument from the Cleveland County District Attorney's Office and Norman PD that says that a doorbell camera was activated by a vehicle passing through an alleyway that is not 10 foot wide. And this doorbell camera is so accurate that it catches the moment that Joe Powell opens the back door of a white Ford truck, but yet the vehicle that passed by is allegedly not one of the witnesses. The only people that Norman PD could find were the three witnesses that are on body camera that are all 21 years old, the mysterious 59-year-old reporting person, which if you've listened to our previous podcast, you will understand exactly why I call him the mysterious reporting person.
Yep.
And the story that Norman PD and apparently the Cleveland County District Attorney's Office has chose to believe
And tell.
is that one of the three witnesses that they spoke to on body cam hit Joe Powell with one punch
Mm-hmm.
so hard that it ended his life.
Correct. So.
And ironically, March 6th, just a few hours before the attack on Joe Powell's life, was the 189th anniversary of the Battle of the Alamo, where approximately 3,000 Mexican soldiers killed several hundred Texans, including Jim Bowie, William Travis, and Davy Crockett. Now, stop me when this sounds familiar. Their deaths in historical writings have been described as multiple people on one person attacks.
That's very ironic.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Joe Powell was an athlete.
He was.
His parents gifted him a Garmin watch to monitor his workouts, his exertion, etc. Joe inherited a low heart rate from his parents, according to our sources.
I believe that when he was in the military in boot camp, they had even questioned whether or not he had bradycardia, which is low heart rate. And it was just an inherent gift.
Which makes sense to me because, again, according to our sources, his resting heart rate was 40 beats per minute.
Yeah, in the 40s, that's pretty standard for an athlete of his stature.
Absolutely.
According to the information obtained from his Garmin watch, his heart rate from 2:02 to 2:04 a.m. was 95 beats per minute. And then from 2:04 to 2:06, there was a raise to 103, which is high for him, significantly high for him.
That would indicate to me, with someone with a resting heart rate of 40 beats per minute, and at 2 o'clock in the morning it's 95, so it's already more than double what it normally is when you rest, and you give a little bit for walking, etc., but it should not have been at 95. I don't feel.
Right. When we took Joe's walk, during that walk, my heart rate was at 95.
Okay.
Which would be normal for me walking.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone like him, that would be a little more exertion.
It certainly seems like it. But from the 2:04 to 2:06 a.m., for it to go up to 103, I feel like that was, we've mentioned before at Logie's and outside of Fat Shack that there seemed to be a little bit of trouble, but nothing could really be pinpointed other than what Joe told his friends on Snapchat.
Yeah, and he sensed it 2 different times.
When his heart rate goes up to 103 beats per minute at just after 2 o'clock in the morning, I have to believe on some level that is where this whole thing started. I know the times that we have from Norman PD, and we've already poked quite a few holes in the story that we have received from Norman Police Department and from the Cleveland County District Attorney. We've done that in this podcast alone, much less what we've covered before.
Right.
But for his heart rate to go up to 103, I have to believe that was truly the start of whatever was about to happen. And even more so because there is no Garmin activity that we have been able to access or been provided by our sources from 2:07 a.m. to 2:53 a.m. No activity.
Okay. And from what I understand, and now keep this in mind, that a standard Garmin watch should be within approximately 30 feet from the phone that it is connected with, which is typically by Bluetooth, to record that data.
Keep that under your hat, kids. We're coming back to that.
So from 2:54 to 2:56 a.m., Joe's heart rate is going back down and is recorded at 66 beats per minute. And then from 3 a.m. to 3:02 a.m., it jumps back up to 83. And then at 3:04 to 3:06, it is peaked again at 100 beats per minute, which again is high for him.
And remember that that is allegedly the time that this incident, assault, whatever you feel like calling it, that is the time that this allegedly took place.
Right.
Now, again, here I come with my BS.
Boop, 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 boop.
Again, we have not been provided from our sources or from any other avenue any Garmin activity that happened between 3:07 a.m. and 3:35 a.m. So we again have a gap in time that we don't have any Garmin activity. Remember what she said. A standard Garmin watch has to be approximately 30 feet from the phone that it's connected with. That's typically by Bluetooth. You're talking about a major college town, a lot of Wi-Fi use. You take that information however you need to, but for 2 periods from 2 in the morning until 3:35 in the morning, there are 2 major periods where we don't have any information from Joe Powell's Garmin.
So just to back it up, from 3:04 to 3:06 a.m., we've got a peak at 100 beats per minute, and then we have a gap in time until 3:36 a.m., where his heart rate is plummeted down to 44, back down to his resting heart rate. 3:44 to 3:46 a.m. at 43 beats per minute. So we've got a peak at 3:04 to 3:06 of 100 beats per minute, that nice half-hour gap in time, and then his heart rate is normal for him, resting. I wonder how he's resting.
That personally tells me that there was a rush of adrenaline, because if you look at those times, at 2:54 to 2:56, he's at 66 beats per minute, which is, I feel like, is fairly normal.
A walk.
But 3 a.m. to 3:02, it jets up to 83, and then 3:04 to 3:06, it jets up even more to almost the peak number that we have access to 100 beats a minute. And then
Suddenly,
Joe is silenced from 3:07 to 3:35 a.m. And now, the rest of the story.
I'm just going to say that sounds like a little blindside to me. But
Paul Harvey.
who am I?
Remember those gaps in time on Joe Powell's Garmin watch that we just so eloquently went over? We asked the Norman Police Department about the location of Joe's phone and where it was found. According to our sources, the phone was not on Joe's person when first responders arrived. According to the Norman PD Public Information Officer, and I quote, "The phone was located in a ditch several blocks away Investigators determined that the phone was at this location prior to the reported altercation and had been there for some time. End quote.
Um, s- um, could you repeat that? Did you say several blocks away?
The email response that we received from Norman PD says that Joe's phone was found several blocks away.
Now, um, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't one block approximately a tenth of a mile, depending on whether you're using city blocks, things like that, where you're located? Just an approximation.
Certainly.
So now we are several blocks away. And based on my education, one is singular, two is a couple, three is a few. So three or more to me would be several.
And Norman PD is either standing on business or bullshit, depending on which story you believe, because they can't tell us why those gaps aren't accounted for. And let me be clear, our sources have told us that the Norman Police Department confiscated both the phone and the watch that Joe Powell had on the night that he was tragically beaten, which ended up being beaten to death.
Beaten to
So
death.
they had access to all of this technology, but they can't account for those gaps. Now, let's look even further. And I'm going to repeat a little bit of what you said here,
Okay.
but let's look at the official response from Norman PD.
Okay. Kind of vague, but let's.
The phone was found, quote, in a ditch several blocks away, end quote. And that answer is more than a little vague, considering how accurate police reports are supposed to be.
Fair.
So let's take that at face value.
Okay.
You mentioned this earlier. A city block is approximately 1/10 of a mile, or roughly 528 feet.
Which makes sense because 1 mile is 5,280 feet. And that's just me showing off my non Oklahoma education. Sorry, Oklahoma.
She is a math magician, ladies and gentlemen. Just to paint the picture for you, the Fat Shack is about 4/10 of a mile from the Mont, or almost 4 blocks away. Now, does this really account for Norman PD's answer of the phone being in a ditch several blocks away? It doesn't for me, because our sources showed us exact locations where the phone was found. Now, we're talking March,
Right.
we're talking spring. So the ditch in question was muddy. There's
Dirty, for sure.
there's some foliage in that area. It's next to kind of a gravel parking area.
Yeah.
But that, walking from where we were, where we have determined that Joe Powell was laying in the parking lot of the Rev,
That was seen on body cam.
that was seen on body cam, to where our sources showed us where Joe's phone was found, that is not
No.
several blocks.
No.
They obviously didn't grow up in a small town, because you learn really quickly how long a block is when you're riding your bike all over town.
Who didn't grow up in a small town? NPD?
Any of them. I can almost assure you the district attorney's office, none of them grew up in a small town, because they should know what a big city block is.
Sure.
So,
Wow.
like we said, from 3:44 to 3:46 a.m., Joe's heartbeat, beats per minute, is at 43. And this is when officers were dispatched to the location.
Mm-hmm.
Joe's breathing, but he's unconscious.
He's struggling to breathe. Very much so. It sounds like he is snoring, but he's struggling to breathe and get oxygen to his brain.
None of them know it yet, but Joe Powell will never walk again. Days later, he will take his last breath. He will not marry. He will not bring grandchildren to visit. He will never hug his parents or siblings again. And as sung in the song The Walk, he won't live long enough to be with his family during their next steps in life. What happened in that late night hour? And why was a young man who had so much in front of him murdered? Tune in next week for Season 2, Episode 5, The Witching Hour.
The Last Clue is a production of Smith Media Team, LLC. For more information, email us at info@smithmediateamllc.com.
Follow us and give us a review by searching The Last Clue or Smith Media Team on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts.